Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I am bringing you guys yet another patch notes video, and today's patch note is going over the update version 4.1.0 released 4 days ago at the time of recording this video, July 26, 2023, where they made a series of changes going over some of the main shooter class weapons as well as a few other weapons in the game and some specials. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get straight into these patch notes, but before we do, I just want to remind you really quickly that I do try to stream most nights on twitch.tv/ZazzaTheLight, so go follow me there, and also subscribe to the channel if you are new, because we are 24 subscribers away from 200, and I'd really love to get there. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. First off, we've got the Aerospray MG and Aerospray RG getting a reduction in the amount of ink consumed by 9%. So this just means that you're going to have 9% more ink in the tank than you would have if you just laid on the trigger full time until it ran out of ink. This is really good. I think the Aerospray already has low ink consumption and it has really big spread, but this will probably help for those Aerospray users out there who just want a little bit more help with using the Aerospray to paint. For example, in splat zones, they might want to just cover the map, or in turf war, or maybe in some of the challenges that they do, they might just want this extra ink to help them out with that painting process without having to worry about running out of ink and not being able to do their job. So this should help you guys a little bit out if you use these weapons. Now, moving on, we've got the Splatter Shot and the T-Tech Splatter Shot and the Hero Shot Replica all getting a reduction of scatter shots while on land by approximately 17%, and it also includes mid-air shot scatter reduction from the Intensify Action gear ability. So basically what this means is that, or the way I interpret it, is that you are going to have your accuracy increased by 17%. So your shots are going to scatter, like the spread of your shots is going to be reduced by 17%. So you'll see, for example, in Splatoon, that when you fire a weapon, for example, you're going to see this like little round cone, or a different shaped cone depending on the weapon, but you're going to see a cone that's going to show you how far your shots could spread, and it'll increase the longer you hold down the trigger. Well, what they're doing with this update is they're changing the way that scatter shots apply to a lot of weapons. So you're going to get a reduction in that cone, or how far your shots can spread, by 17% on land and in midair when you're using Intensify Action, which is really good. So this is sort of a buff to Intensify Action, so definitely consider using that more if you want a little bit more accuracy in the air. And if you're going to be using it mainly on the ground, then you get a passive 17% buff to these Slayer weapons. So yeah, consider picking some of these up. They're all very good options. Same thing with the NZAP. They're going to do the exact same thing that we just mentioned up here. The NZAP is already extremely accurate. I would say that the Splatter Shots and the Hero Shot definitely needed this buff just because they feel like they have really short range and really like meh accuracy. So I always just opted to use the NZAP or the Splash-O-Matic, and I think that's what most people did. But this update should definitely help the Splatter Shots become a little bit more popular. Same with the NZAP. It's just going to be better than it already was. So I'm not really sure why they gave it to the NZAP, but they did. So enjoy using that for the next few weeks or months, depending on how long it is before you get the next patch. Moving on to the Splatter Shot Pro and the Forge Splatter Shot Pro, you get an increase in the radius of the ink splatter at the point of impact by approximately 8%. So what this means is that when you shoot the Splatter Shot Pro, there's a little, or when you shoot any weapon that has pellets, right, you're going to get a splash on the ground, right? And that's how you paint the ground. That's how it works, right? But each pellet is a different size depending on the weapon. When the pellet lands on the ground, the spread of ink that it has on the ground is going to be a little bit different. This is simply just increasing the radius of that ink splatter from the Pro by 8%. So I wouldn't say this is enough for you to just start using Pro to get map control or paint a zone or anything like that. Like that shouldn't be your primary focus when using a Pro still. It's still to like kill people because that's what it's good at. But it means that in certain situations where for example, you might be getting painted like at your feet or inked at your feet, right? You can't really get out because your feet are getting inked a ton. You could maybe use it to get away a little bit quicker because you can ink your feet and it'll have a bigger radius, so you have a better chance of getting out of a sticky situation. Or maybe it will help with you getting the clutch control in a zone every once in a while, so keep that in mind. The Luna Blaster and Luna Blaster Neo get a reduction in scatter shots in midair as well by 25%. This is a little bit weird for me because the Luna Blaster and the Luna Blaster Neo, like they're blasters, it's one big pellet. So I don't know what they mean by scatter of the shots. What I'm assuming is like maybe the pellets that would come out of it after it exploded, the scatter is going to be less, or maybe it's like they're just making the weapon more accurate. Because blasters are already pretty accurate, but maybe they're just making it so like there's not as much of a radius as to how far it could deviate from where you shoot it. It just shoots a lot straighter. So yeah, I don't really know what the change is going to look like because I'm not a blaster player, but I'm assuming for you blaster players out there, this is an amazing change that you're all very excited about. And if you are a blaster player, be sure to leave a comment down below in the, I was going to say description, but in the comments, letting everybody else watching this video and me know exactly how big of a deal this change is. It also says that you get that application to your midair shots as well. So that should be great because people often use blasters while jumping. So that's awesome. And they're just saying here that the intensify action gear abilities will not change when you equip the maximum. So just keep that in mind. Next, moving on to the dynamo roller, we're just going to reduce the amount of time it takes for ink to begin recovering after a horizontal or vertical swing by about 1/6 of a second. So this is pretty decent when it comes to how quickly you're going to get your ink back. Maybe if you were running ink recovery up on your dynamo roller build, you can take a sub or two off. I'm not sure how many people actually ran ink recovery up on dynamo roller. I would assume that more people would run like ink saver main or something like that, like a decent amount of it, just because it takes so much ink. But you know, any sort of ink efficiency buffs are good ink efficiency buffs, so we'll take it for the dynamo roller. And I have a few friends that play the dynamo roller, so they're going to be pumped about this one. Next is the paintbrush, and this is the one that I have actually been testing out the most myself, and I think it's potentially maybe the second or third biggest change on this patch, right? The biggest ones have to be the accuracy buffs to the end zap and the splatter shot, because that's huge. They almost never do that. But with the paintbrush, you're going to get your ink consumption reduced when springing the brush by 25%, and also when running on the ground with the brush by 25%. And this is huge because, as you guys know, the paintbrush is a recent heavy class of the ink brush variant, or ink brush class of weapons. And it took a ton of ink to use. So not a lot of people were using it because even though it could kill and it had ridiculously good range for a brush, the problem was that it was using a ton of ink and it felt like it was really unforgiving. You would, maybe use like 2 or 3 swings after running for like a second, and then you'd already be almost out of ink. And it's really rough when that's how much room you have to kill somebody. Because if you miss 2 of those shots, then you don't have enough ink to kill, and then the Slayer weapons would just destroy you. Same with midline weapons. This is going to give a ton of forgiveness to your weapon, and it's been doing that for me in my own playstyle with the paintbrush, where now I have like 4 or 5 shots and like a second or 2 of running around to play with before I actually lose all of my ink. So I have a lot more room to miss and maybe, like zone my opponent into a certain area and then kill them with the last 2 or 3 shots. So this is a huge change. For those of you who are considering picking up the paintbrush or who have always wanted to try it but have been hesitant, please, please, please try it this patch. It's so fun to play. I love this weapon so much. I'm going to be making videos about it in the future, so look forward to those. But yeah, definitely pick up the weapon after this change, guys. Now we're moving on to the goo tuber, adjusted the display indication, or indicating the charge amount to make it easier to tell when it will exceed 100 damage dealt. I don't know how this works because I'm not a charger player. I actually didn't know, out of all my time playing Splatoon, I didn't know that there was, like, I know the charge says, okay, when it's fully charged, this is how much damage it'll deal. I know that. But I don't know, like, I didn't know you could tell exactly how much damage you were going to deal based on the charge meter. So maybe that's what this is saying, is like they'll put a dot. Maybe they put a dot somewhere. All right, so now we got the blobber. Increase the radius of ink splatter at the point of impact and from ink spray by approximately 10%. So this is the same thing we were talking about earlier with the, what was it? The Splattershot Pro. But with the blobber, it covers a lot more range, or not more range, but it has a lot more ink coverage potential than the Pro. So this is going to be great. Just by 10%, you're going to be covering a lot more space with your ink. And again, I think for things like zones or getting map control back or turf war or challenges, these changes are going to be especially potent. So yeah, I don't play blobber a lot, but this should be helpful. Last but not least, this is the one I'm second most excited for next to paintbrush, is the tri-stringer buffs. Now, you're getting an increase to your damage dealt to opponents by the explosions of shots lodged in the terrain by 28 to 30. So what this means is, with the tri-stringer, when you shoot, you get the initial hit of the projectile, and then there's like a projectile that lasts on the ground. It's the actual pellets themselves. And they stay there for like, I don't know, like point something seconds, and then they explode. So before it was 28% damage, now, or 28 damage, not 28%, 28 damage, now it's 30 damage. And you might not think this is a significant change because it's only 2 points of damage, but it's huge because there are certain combos that you can do with the Tri-Stringer that leave your opponent very close to death, and this 30 damage that it now has will allow you to kill with that. And there's a few videos on Twitter that you can find. I might, show one on the video or show one myself. But yeah, this is going to be a pretty big change, and I was even getting killed by Tri-Stringers because I thought I was safe and I thought I wouldn't die, and I was just barely dying to their damage. And I run like Ink Resistance up and a ton of other perks that allow you to like not be as susceptible to those pellets. So, and I said perks, I meant ability chunks. But yeah, this change is great. It's better than you think it is. If you were running Tri-Stringer, this is a passive buff to you that's really good. You should start seeing a few more kills on your scoreboard. And if you weren't playing Tri-Stringer, I'd consider trying it out with this buff, same as I recommended with the Paintbrush. And last but not least, it increased the movement speed while charging and while fully charged by approximately 13%. This is great. Movement speed buffs are always good, especially with charge class weapons that you have to, stand still for, or not stand still, but like move really slowly for, because it gives you a little bit more mobility when you're doing the charging animation. So that's really helpful to the Tri-Stringer. Now, moving on to the sub-weapon changes, there's only two. Sprinkler got its duration. Let's see, it says the duration of the state. So it got its duration increased where the ink is strongest immediately after placement by approximately 3 seconds. So I think maybe it's saying like in the beginning of when the sprinkler is placed, like there's a ton of ink that's being shot out, and that duration of it being its strongest is just literally increased by 3 seconds. So you're just going to have a little bit more ink coverage with the sprinkler is basically what that means. And then with the angle shooter, increase the damage dealt to opponents by direct hits from 35 to 40. This is needed. The angle shooter to me is a really bad sub weapon. It's hard to hit. It doesn't work a lot of the times. And so many people run like Ink Resistance DX or whatever it's called, the mix, where it reduces the amount of time that you can be radared, that it's already like meh. But having the damage be more is great because you could potentially actually start getting kills with this thing. Obviously you could before, but just like with the Tri-Stringer buff of 2 damage points, having 5 extra damage points is always helpful. So that's going to be great for angle shooter users. And last but not least, or not last, but we got the specials now. So the specials, both special points and special weapons, increase the damage dealt by explosions from 40 to 60 for Trizuka. This is good. It means that the explosion, like not when like the actual pellets hit, but when it lands on the ground and then explodes. I think that's what they're talking about. That's going to be more splash damage for you, so that should pick up some more kills, especially when going for like crab players or going for the big bubbler and people inside of it. Maybe you'll get some more kills that way as well. The ink vac increased the radius of the ink shot explosion by approximately 50% when the amount of the opponent's ink that was sucked up is at the minimum. So basically, when you get the least amount of ink you could possibly suck up from the opponent, your radius of the big ink nuke that you shoot out is increased by 50%, which is good for the ink vac because it means it's not useless if your opponents decide to stop shooting, which at high level they always do. And then increase the radius of the ink shot explosion by approximately 25% when the amount of the opponent's ink that was sucked up is at the maximum. So when you're at the maximum amount of ink charge, it makes it even bigger by 25%, which is good because, in my opinion, basically they're giving a base buff to the weapon when the opponents play well around it to make it so it's not just like completely reliant on your opponents. And then when you do your job and you force your opponents to shoot at it, or you just catch them in a really bad position, you get rewarded a lot more for it. So Inkvac should be a really good weapon, and backline main should be very happy about this change. The Super Chump is getting a change as well, increase the amount of damage dealt to players caught in an explosion near a decoy from 60 to 70, and increase the radius of that area by 38%, and then increase the radius of the decoy explosion area that deals 35 damage by approximately 25%. This is just basically meaning that it's going to do more damage at a wider area of effect. Super Jump to me is still not a good special. I've tried it out with CDS, Custom Dually Squelchers, and the junior weapon that it's on. and it just doesn't feel good to me. Or I'm sorry, not the junior weapon. It's the Clash Blaster, I think. But it just doesn't feel good to me. I think the problem with Super Chumps isn't really. I mean, it might have been their damage and their area of effect, but I think the next change should definitely be the HP of the Super Chumps. Because the problem is, no matter how wide it will affect a player and no matter how much damage it does, if people can just get rid of the ones near them in like an instant, it doesn't really matter. And a ton of people run Object Shredder, which increases the damage that you deal to objects like the Super Chump, Squid Beacons, the Big Bubbler, etc. So with that in mind, I think Super Chumps actually just need a hard HP buff. I think they need to be a little bit more tanky than they are right now. And I think they need to be harder to kill. With these changes and then a future HP buff, potentially this special could start to be good. But for now, I think it's still bad. And I've played with it a bit. So unfortunate, but it is what it is. Next is Inkjet. Decrease the radius of the explosion area that deals 50 damage by approximately 15%. And no changes to the radius of the area that deals 30. So basically they're just saying for the area that deals 50, you're just gonna have a lower area of effect, and I guess that's fair. Inkjet has been pretty strong for a while now. It's been used by top players for ages, and it struggled in Splatoon 2 and then struggled in the beginning of this game, but I think it's fine now. And I guess they're reducing this because they feel it's a bit too strong. So to be fair, I haven't been playing the game as much as I should have, so I don't really know exactly how big of a deal this change is going to be, but we'll see in the future. And now, last but not least, we've just got the changes. Clash Blaster Neo is getting the amount of ink that they need, or ink points that they need, special points that they need, from 180 to 170, so that's going to be a buff. Carbon Roller from 180 to 170. Rapid Blaster Pro Deco from 180 to 190, so a nerf. Tri-Slosher Nude Vo from 180 to 190, Mini Splatling from 180 to 190, and Ballpoint Splatling from 200 to 210. So yeah, that is all of the new Splatoon 3 changes in the version 4.1.1. I was going to say 4.1.1. 4.1.0 changes. And again, they released July 26th. So yeah, that's my opinions on them. We went over them really quickly. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I wanted to make these quicker. Right, I want to make these patch notes videos quicker and not 30 minutes. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe. Like, again, we're 24 subscribers away from 200, so please subscribe if you like the content. Follow me over on my Twitch page, join the public Discord, all that good stuff, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. All right, bye-bye.